On a crisp autumn evening in downtown Los Angeles, where the setting sun painted the city skyline in hues of gold and purple, a story of unexpected kindness was about to unfold. If you're watching this video, take a moment to comment where you're viewing from, as we share a tale that reminds us how a single moment can change someone's life forever. Holden Briggs had been living on the streets of Los Angeles for the past 8 months. Once a promising musician who played at local venues, a series of misfortunes had left him without a home, carrying his worldly possessions in a weathered backpack and his cherished guitar in its worn case. Despite his circumstances, he maintained a quiet dignity that spoke of better days. The streets of Beverly Hills weren't his usual territory. Most days he stayed closer to downtown, where the community of unhoused people looked out for each other. But something had drawn him to this upscale neighborhood on this particular evening. Maybe it was the memory of performing at some of these high-end restaurants years ago, or perhaps it was simply fate guiding his steps. The autumn air carried the sweet scent of jasmine from the manicured gardens of luxury homes and boutique shops. Well-dressed people hurried past, their designer shoes clicking against the pristine sidewalk, their eyes carefully avoiding contact with the man who didn't fit into their carefully curated world. Holden sat on a clean piece of cardboard, his guitar case open beside him. He hadn't played today. Sometimes the weight of his situation made even music feel heavy. His sign, written in neat handwriting that hinted at his educated background, simply read, "Any help appreciated. God bless." He had learned that sometimes the simplest messages spoke the loudest. The sun was setting when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb nearby. The door opened, and a figure stepped out, tall, well-dressed, with an unmistakable presence. Even in the growing twilight, there was something commanding about the way he moved. Few of the passers-by seemed to notice, too caught up in their own worlds to recognize who had just emerged from the vehicle. Holden noticed, though. How could he not? Wesley Snipes had starred in some of his favorite films. But more than that, there was something about the actor's bearing that commanded attention, a quiet confidence that spoke of someone who hadn't forgotten where he came from, despite where life had taken him. The moment could have passed like any other. Snipes could have walked by, perhaps offering a polite nod or even dropping a few dollars in the guitar case without breaking stride. That's what most people did when they decided to acknowledge Holden's existence at all. But something different was about to happen. Something that would remind everyone watching that sometimes the most powerful moments come from the simplest interactions. As Snipes approached, Holden made a decision that surprised even himself. Maybe it was the way the actor carried himself, or perhaps it was just the desperation of another long day on the streets, but he found himself speaking up. "Excuse me, sir," he called out, his voice carrying the remnants of his former confidence. "Could you spare $1?" It was a simple request, one that Holden had made countless times before. But this time felt different. Maybe it was because he wasn't just asking for money, he was reaching out for connection, for acknowledgement, for a moment of being seen as a human being rather than a problem to be avoided. The next few moments would become a story shared thousands of times across social media, but not for the reasons anyone might expect. It wasn't about celebrity or status. It wasn't about the amount of money involved. It was about something far more valuable, human dignity and the power of genuine connection. Snipes stopped. In that moment, the busy streets seemed to fade away. The constant flow of traffic, the chatter of passers-by, the ambient noise of the city, all of it receded into the background. What happened next would demonstrate why sometimes the smallest interactions can have the biggest impact. The actor turned and really looked at Holden. Not the dismissive glance that homeless people usually received, not the pitying look that could feel worse than being ignored, but a genuine look of one human being truly seeing another. In that moment, the gap between their current circumstances seemed to vanish. What many people didn't know about Wesley Snipes was his own history of struggling before making it in Hollywood. He understood what it meant to have dreams deferred, to face obstacles that seemed insurmountable. Perhaps that's why he didn't just reach for his wallet or hurry past like so many others. Instead, he did something that would soon become a powerful reminder of how simple acts of kindness can transform lives. But it wasn't just about what he did, it was about how he did it. In a world where celebrity interactions often become viral moments of flashy generosity, what was about to unfold would stand out for its genuine humanity. Holden sat straighter, his weathered guitar case beside him telling its own story of better days and dreams put on hold. The evening air had grown cooler, and the street lights were beginning to flicker on, casting pools of warm light on the sidewalk. In this moment, two men from very different worlds were about to share an interaction that would remind everyone watching about the power of human connection. The story that was about to unfold would challenge assumptions about celebrity, homelessness, and the simple act of asking for help. It would remind us that sometimes the most powerful moments don't come from grand gestures or planned publicity, but from genuine human connection in unexpected places. As Wesley Snipes stood there, taking in the scene before him, the usual barriers that separated people on these streets, wealth, status, circumstance, seemed to fade away. What remained were two human beings about to share a moment that would inspire thousands and remind us all that kindness doesn't need an audience to be meaningful. Holden's simple request for $1 was about to receive a response that would demonstrate why sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness aren't about the money at all. They're about recognition, respect, and the understanding that every human being has a story worth hearing. The sun had almost completely set now, the city's lights creating a glittering backdrop for what was about to unfold. The evening crowds were thinning, the rush hour traffic easing, creating an almost intimate atmosphere on the usually busy street. What happened next would become a testament to the power of human connection and the unexpected ways that lives can intersect and change forever. As Snipes began to respond, no one nearby could have guessed that this moment would soon become a powerful reminder of how a simple interaction between two people could spark a chain reaction of kindness and understanding that would extend far beyond that single evening on a Beverly Hills street. For Holden, this was more than just another evening asking for help. For Snipes, it was more than just another fan encounter. What was about to happen would demonstrate why sometimes the most meaningful moments come not from grand gestures or planned events, but from the simple decision to stop, look someone in the eye, and truly see them as a fellow human being. The city continued its endless rhythm around them, but in this moment, on this corner, something extraordinary was about to take place, a reminder that even in our most challenging moments, human connection has the power to transform lives in ways we might never expect. Wesley Snipes stood there for a moment, his expression thoughtful as he studied the man before him. The guitar case caught his attention. Not just another prop used to gain sympathy, but a well-worn companion that spoke of countless performances and cherished memories. To everyone's surprise, instead of just reaching for his wallet, Snipes did something unexpected. He sat down on the sidewalk next to Holden. The action itself was shocking enough to draw stares from passers-by. Here was Wesley Snipes, dressed in an impeccable suit, sitting cross-legged on a Beverly Hills sidewalk next to a homeless man. But what happened next would prove even more remarkable. "That's a nice guitar you've got there," Snipes said, his voice carrying the same quiet intensity that had made him famous. "How long have you been playing?" The question wasn't delivered with pity or condescension, but with genuine interest. It was the kind of question one musician might ask another, one artist recognizing another's craft. Holden's eyes lit up for the first time in what felt like months. It wasn't about the fact that he was talking to Wesley Snipes, it was about being seen as more than just another homeless person, being acknowledged as someone with a story, with talents, with worth. 20 years, Holden replied, his voice growing stronger as he spoke about his passion. Used to play at venues all over the city. The Troubadour, the Viper Room. His voice trailed off, the memory of better days hanging in the air between them. What unfolded over the next few minutes would become a masterclass in human dignity and the power of genuine connection. Snipes wasn't just listening, he was engaged, asking questions about Holden's music, his influences, the stories behind his songs. The conversation flowed naturally, two men discussing art and life as equals. By now, a small crowd had begun to gather at a respectful distance, phones discreetly recording what they assumed would be just another viral celebrity moment. But they were witnessing something far more meaningful, a reminder that sometimes the greatest act of kindness is simply treating someone like a human being. "You know," Snipes said, leaning back slightly, I remember what it's like to struggle. Before Blade, before any of the success, there were times when I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. His words weren't delivered as a lecture or a motivation speech, but as a shared truth between two people who understood life's ups and downs. Holden nodded, his fingers unconsciously moving to the guitar case. Snipes noticed the gesture and smiled. "Why don't you play something?" he suggested. It wasn't a command or a condition, it was an invitation to share something meaningful. For a moment, Holden hesitated. It had been weeks since he'd played, the weight of his circumstances making even his beloved music feel distant. But something about this moment, about being treated with such genuine respect, gave him the courage to reach for his guitar. The instrument he pulled out was well-worn but clearly well-loved. Despite the scratches and wear, it had been carefully maintained, a testament to Holden's dedication to his craft even in the hardest times. As he positioned it in his lap, his hands moved with the confidence of someone who had spent countless hours mastering their instrument. What happened next would leave everyone watching in awe. Holden began to play, his fingers dancing across the strings with practiced grace. The song that emerged was hauntingly beautiful, an original composition that spoke of hope and struggle, of dreams deferred but not forgotten. Snipes sat quietly, his expression thoughtful as the music filled the evening air. Other pedestrians stopped, drawn by the unexpected concert taking place on the Beverly Hills sidewalk. But this wasn't street performance for tips, this was one artist sharing his soul with another who truly understood. As the last notes faded away, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then Snipes spoke, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone listening lean in. "That's real talent," he said simply. "And talent like that shouldn't be lost to the streets." What Wesley Snipes did next would change not just Holden's life, but the lives of countless others who would hear this story. But it wasn't about money, though that would come later. It was about something far more valuable, opportunity and dignity. "I've got some friends in the music industry," Snipes said, pulling out his phone. "People who understand that great music can come from anywhere, who know that sometimes all it takes is one person believing in someone's talent." As he spoke, he was already dialing, putting his words into immediate action. This wasn't the empty promise of "I'll make some calls" that so many in Hollywood toss around casually. This was real, immediate, and decisive action. But before making the call, Snipes did something else, something that spoke volumes about his character. He asked Holden's permission. "Would you be interested in playing for some people who might be able to help get your music heard? Only if you want to, no pressure." The respect in that simple question, the acknowledgement of Holden's agency in his own story, brought tears to the eyes of several onlookers. This wasn't about a celebrity's grand gesture, it was about one human being recognizing another's dignity and worth. Holden's voice shook slightly as he answered, "Yes, I'd like that." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of renewed hope, of dreams that had been dormant but never truly died. As Snipes made the call, speaking quietly but with purpose, more people gathered around. They were witnessing something rare, not just a moment of celebrity kindness, but a genuine connection between two people that transcended their current circumstances. The conversation on the phone was brief but decisive. Snipes spoke with the authority of someone who understood both the music industry and the importance of giving talented people a real chance. When he hung up, his smile said everything before he even spoke. "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., he said, writing down an address on a business card. "They're expecting you. And don't worry about cleaning up or changing. Just bring yourself and that guitar. Real talent doesn't need window dressing." But Snipes wasn't finished. He reached into his wallet, and what he pulled out wasn't just money, it was a bridge to tomorrow. "This isn't charity," he said firmly, handing Holden enough cash to get a hotel room and a decent meal. "This is an investment in a fellow artist. You can't create if you're worried about where you're going to sleep tonight." The amount wasn't excessive. Snipes understood that too much too quickly could be overwhelming. It was exactly what was needed to give Holden a chance to face tomorrow's opportunity at his best. The crowd that had gathered began to applaud, but Snipes quickly shook his head. "This isn't a show," he said quietly but firmly. "This is just one person helping another. We've all needed help at some point, The only difference is whether we found it when we needed it most. As Snipes prepared to leave, he did something that would be talked about long after the money was spent and the record deals were signed. He sat and listened to one more song, not because he had to, not for the cameras that were still rolling, but because he genuinely wanted to hear more of Holden's music. This final song was different from the first. It was raw, emotional, a story of struggle and survival that could only come from real experience. As Holden played, his confidence grew, his posture straightened, and glimpses of the performer he used to be, and could be again, shone through. When the song ended, Snipes stood, brushing off his suit with casual elegance. "Remember," he said, "tomorrow at 10. And Holden?" He paused, making sure he had eye contact. "Play exactly what you just played. That's the kind of truth the world needs to hear." As Snipes walked away, disappearing into the gathering darkness of the Los Angeles evening, he left behind more than just money and an opportunity. He had given something far more valuable. He had given hope, dignity, and a reminder that every person's story deserves to be heard. The crowd slowly dispersed, but the energy of what they had witnessed remained. This wasn't just another viral moment of celebrity kindness, it was a masterclass in human dignity, in the power of genuine connection, and in the importance of seeing people for who they are rather than where they are. Holden sat there for a long moment, the business card in one hand, his guitar in the other, the weight of possibility replacing the weight of despair. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for the first time in months, he had something even more valuable than money. He had hope. This story was about to take another turn, one that would impact not just Holden's life but the lives of countless others who would hear about this encounter. But that part of the story was still to come, and it would begin with a simple meeting at 10 a.m. the next morning. That night, as videos of the encounter began spreading across social media, something remarkable started happening in Los Angeles. The story of Wesley Snipes and the homeless musician wasn't just going viral, it was sparking a conversation about humanity, dignity, and the power of genuine connection. Holden Briggs checked into a modest but clean hotel just off Sunset Boulevard, the first real bed he'd had in months. But he couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying the evening's events, not just the opportunity he'd been given, but the way Snipes had treated him, like a fellow artist, like someone whose story mattered. Meanwhile, across the city, people who had witnessed the encounter were sharing their perspectives. Serena Banks, a local barista who had been walking home from her shift, posted a video that captured the essence of what made this moment different from typical celebrity encounters. "I've seen plenty of famous people interact with homeless folks in Beverly Hills," her post read, but this was something else. Snipes didn't just throw money at him. He sat down, he listened, he treated this man like a human being. And that music! I've never heard anything so real. The original video had already garnered millions of views, but it wasn't the usual viral sensation of a celebrity's grand gesture. Instead, people were captivated by the genuine interaction, the respect shown, and most importantly, the transformation they witnessed in Holden as he played his guitar. Back in his hotel room, Holden carefully cleaned his guitar, his movements deliberate and focused. The instrument that had been his constant companion through months on the street now represented something new, not just survival, but possibility. He began to play quietly, working through the songs he might perform tomorrow, each note carrying the weight of renewed purpose. The impact of the evening's events rippled through the city in unexpected ways. At the very same corner where the encounter had taken place, other street musicians began gathering, drawn by the energy of what had happened there. They shared their own stories, their own struggles, their own dreams of being truly heard. But the most powerful aftermath was happening in the digital space, where the conversation went far beyond just another heartwarming viral moment. People began sharing their own stories of unexpected kindness, of moments when someone saw past their circumstances to recognize their humanity. Wesley Snipes himself hadn't posted anything about the encounter. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than any social media post could. But his silence only added to the impact of what he'd done. This wasn't about publicity or image, it was about genuine human connection. As dawn approached, Holden finally dozed off, his guitar close at hand. In just a few hours, he would head to the address Snipes had given him, carrying with him not just his music but the dignity that had been restored through one meaningful encounter. The morning brought new developments. Local news stations had picked up the story, but they found themselves covering something deeper than just another celebrity good deed. They were reporting on a moment that had sparked a citywide conversation about how we see and treat each other. Marcus Ellery, a local news reporter, captured it perfectly in his morning broadcast. What we witnessed last night wasn't just about a famous actor helping someone in need. It was about the power of treating people with dignity, about recognizing the talent and worth that exists in every human being, regardless of their circumstances. As the morning progressed, more details emerged about the impact of Snipes' actions. The hotel where Holden was staying reported that anonymous donors had called to extend his stay, ensuring he would have stable housing while pursuing this new opportunity. But more importantly, other homeless musicians in the area were being noticed, their stories finally being heard. The address Snipes had given Holden turned out to be a well-respected recording studio in Hollywood. As Holden approached the building, guitar case in hand, he was met by Noah Sinclair, a veteran producer known for giving new artists their first break. "Wesley called me last night," Noah explained, leading Holden into the studio. "He said I needed to hear something real, something true. He said you had stories that needed to be told." The producer's words echoed Snipes' own emphasis on authenticity over appearance. Inside the studio, Holden found himself in an environment that honored his artistry rather than his circumstances. The technical staff treated him with the same respect they would show any recording artist. This wasn't charity, this was professional recognition of talent. As news of what was happening spread, something unexpected began occurring at homeless shelters across Los Angeles. People weren't just donating money, they were stopping to listen to the stories of those they might have previously ignored. The simple act of genuine human connection that Snipes had demonstrated was inspiring others to do the same. Social workers reported a surge in volunteers offering not just help, but genuine engagement with the homeless community. Georgia Wynn, a longtime advocate for the homeless, observed, "What Snipes did was show people that it's not just about giving money, it's about recognizing the humanity in each person we meet." Back in the studio, Holden was preparing to record. His fingers moved across the guitar strings with renewed confidence, each note carrying months of struggle, years of practice, and decades of dreams. The song he chose to record first was the same one he had played for Snipes, raw, honest, and undeniably powerful. As he played, the studio fell silent. Hardened industry professionals, who had heard countless artists come and go, found themselves moved by the authenticity of his performance. This wasn't just music, it was truth set to melody, pain transformed into art. Meanwhile, Wesley Snipes had maintained his dignified silence about the previous night's events. His only action was a single phone call to the studio, checking to ensure that Holden had arrived and was being treated with respect. No publicity, no social media posts, no attempt to capitalize on the viral moment, just genuine concern for a fellow artist. The impact of Snipes' approach was profound. Other celebrities began quietly seeking out similar opportunities to make real connections, to offer genuine help without the fanfare of cameras or social media attention. The focus shifted from viral moments to authentic human interaction. By midday, Holden had recorded 3 songs. Each one told a different part of his story: the struggle of life on the streets, the dreams that never quite died, the hope that remained even in the darkest moments. The studio executives listened with growing excitement, recognizing that they were witnessing something special. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Holden stepped outside during a break. A small group of homeless musicians had gathered, drawn by the story of what had happened the night before. They weren't there to ask for help, they were there to share their own music, their own stories, their own dreams. What happened next wasn't planned or orchestrated. Holden joined them, and together they began to play. The music that emerged was a spontaneous collaboration of souls who understood struggle, hope, and the power of artistic expression. Studio staff recorded the impromptu performance, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The day's events were about more than just one man's potential success story. They represented a shift in how people viewed the intersection of talent, opportunity, and human dignity. Wesley Snipes' simple act of sitting down and truly listening had sparked a movement that was changing lives across the city. As the sun began to set on this transformative day, social media was filled not just with the original viral video, but with new stories of connection, of people taking the time to truly see and hear those around them. The hashtag #ListenLikeSnipes began trending, encouraging people to approach others with genuine interest and respect. But for Holden, sitting in the studio with his guitar and a day's worth of recordings, the most important change wasn't external. It was the restoration of his own sense of worth, the recognition that his story and his music mattered. Wesley Snipes hadn't just given him an opportunity, he had reminded him of who he was all along. The day's events would continue to ripple outward, touching lives far beyond Los Angeles. But the real story wasn't about viral videos or recording contracts. It was about the power of human dignity, the importance of genuine connection, and the truth that every person has value regardless of their circumstances. 1 month after that fateful evening on a Beverly Hills street corner, the impact of Wesley Snipes' simple act of kindness had grown far beyond what anyone could have anticipated. The transformation wasn't just in Holden's life, though that was remarkable enough, but in how people across the country had begun to view and treat those living on the streets. Holden Briggs' first single, Street Corner Serenade, had been released independently, with all proceeds going to a foundation he had established to help homeless musicians. The song, recorded that first day in the studio, carried the raw emotion of his experiences and the hope that had been rekindled through one meaningful encounter. The foundation, named simply Listen First, had a straightforward mission: to create opportunities for homeless artists to be heard, not just as people in need, but as creators with valuable contributions to make. It wasn't about charity, it was about dignity, opportunity, and the power of genuine human connection. Wesley Snipes had maintained his characteristic dignity throughout the month, declining interviews about the incident. His only public statement came in the form of a short message posted when Holden's single was released: "Real recognizes real. Sometimes all it takes is listening." The simplicity of his words only amplified their impact. The recording studio where Holden had first played had transformed one of its rooms into a weekly open mic space for homeless musicians. Noah Sinclair, the producer who had first recorded Holden, explained the decision. "What Wesley Snipes showed us that night wasn't just about one talented musician, it was about how many voices we've been failing to hear." But the most profound changes were happening on the streets themselves. The corner where Snipes had sat down with Holden had become something of an unofficial gathering place for street musicians. They called it Dignity Corner, and the music that emerged there each evening carried stories that had too long gone untold. Holden, now living in a small apartment and working on his first album, made a point of returning to that corner every week. Not to perform, but to listen. He would sit with other homeless musicians, sharing his story and, more importantly, hearing theirs. The simple act of genuine listening that Snipes had demonstrated had become a movement. Local businesses had begun to change their approaches too. Rowan Blackwell, owner of a coffee shop near Dignity Corner, started a program called Coffee and Connection, where customers could pay forward not just beverages, but time, sitting and truly listening to the stories of those who had been invisible for too long. The impact rippled through the entertainment industry as well. Other celebrities, inspired by Snipes' genuine approach, began finding their own ways to make real connections. It wasn't about photo ops or viral moments anymore. It was about authentic human interaction and meaningful support. Serena Banks, the barista who had first shared the video of Snipes and Holden, had started a documentary project capturing the stories of homeless artists across Los Angeles. "What we witnessed that night wasn't just about music or fame," she explained. "It was about seeing the humanity in each person we meet." The statistics spoke volumes. In the months since the encounter, homeless shelters reported a significant increase in not just donations, but in people volunteering their time to engage with residents, to listen to their stories, to recognize their dignity. The hashtag #ListenLikeSnipes movement had evolved from a hashtag into a genuine shift in how people approached those living on the streets. Holden's foundation had already helped 3 other homeless musicians record their music and share their stories. Each one spoke not just of the opportunity they'd been given, but of the dignity with which they'd been treated. It wasn't about creating viral stars, it was about recognizing the artistic voice in every person, regardless of their circumstances. The local government had taken notice too. Inspired by the movement, they had initiated a program called Street Artists in Residence, providing stable housing and studio space for homeless musicians while they developed their craft. It wasn't charity, it was investment in human potential. Wesley Snipes had visited the studio once more, quietly and without fanfare, to listen to some of the music being created. His presence wasn't announced, his visit wasn't photographed, but his impact was felt in every note played, every story shared, every dignity restored. The transformation in Holden himself was profound, but not in the way many might have expected. Yes, he was no longer homeless, and his music was reaching people across the country. But the real change was in how he saw himself and his role in the world. He wasn't just a success story, he was a bridge, helping others cross the same gulf he had traversed. What Mr. Snipes did that night, Holden explained during a small gathering at Dignity Corner, wasn't about the money or the opportunity. It was about seeing me as a human being, as an artist, as someone whose story mattered. That's what we're trying to do here, to help people be seen, to help them be heard. The movement had spread to other cities as well. Similar corners had sprung up in New York, Chicago, Nashville, each becoming a space where dignity was restored through genuine connection and shared music. The simple act of sitting down and listening had become a powerful tool for social change. Local music venues had begun hosting regular showcases featuring homeless musicians, not as charity events, but as legitimate artistic performances. The audiences who came didn't come out of pity, they came because they had learned that some of the most powerful music comes from those who have lived through the hardest times. The story had even made its way into music education programs, where students were learning not just about notes and scales, but about the power of music to bridge social divides and restore human dignity. They called it the Snipes Principle, the idea that genuine connection can transform lives. As Holden worked on his album, he made sure each song carried not just his own story, but echoes of all the stories he'd heard on the streets. His music had evolved, becoming a voice not just for himself, but for all those still waiting to be heard. The corner where it all began had been officially renamed Dignity Plaza by the City Council. A small plaque told the story of that evening, not focusing on the celebrity involved, but on the power of genuine human connection. The final line read simply, "Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to listen." Wesley Snipes' impact continued to resonate, not through grand gestures or public statements, but through the quiet dignity with which he had treated one homeless musician on a Beverly Hills street corner. His actions had demonstrated that true change doesn't always require massive resources or elaborate programs. Sometimes it just requires treating each person we meet with genuine respect and interest. The movement had even begun to change how media covered stories about homelessness. Instead of statistics and stereotypes, they were sharing individual stories, individual talents, individual dreams. The humanity that Snipes had recognized in Holden was being recognized in countless others. 1 year later, as Holden prepared to release his full album, he made sure the first acknowledgement in the liner notes read, "To Wesley Snipes, who didn't just give me $1, he gave me back my dignity. And to all those still waiting to be heard, keep playing. Someone is about to stop and listen." The legacy of that evening continues to grow, touching lives far beyond that Beverly Hills street corner. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness aren't about money or fame, they're about taking the time to truly see and hear another human being. If you've been moved by this story, take a moment to share in the comments below about a time when someone truly listened to you, truly saw you, truly recognized your worth. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about, the power we all have to change lives simply by being willing to stop, sit down, and listen. Remember, every person you pass on the street has a story, has dreams, has value. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to listen, to recognize that value, to restore that dignity. As Wesley Snipes showed us, sometimes the simplest acts of kindness can have the most profound impact. Let's make this more than just another inspiring video, let's make it a movement. Next time you pass someone on the street, remember the lesson of Dignity Corner. So, listen, connect, Because you never know when your simple act of kindness might be the moment that changes someone's life forever.